Okay, ready to dive into something kind of different. We're tackling angels, but hold on to your halos, folks, because we're going way beyond the average cherub. We've got Gustav Davidson's A Dictionary of Angels as our guide.
You know, it's funny, having a whole dictionary dedicated to these beings really highlights something.
What's that?
The Bible itself, surprisingly quiet on actually naming these celestial VIPs.
Wait, really? I always figured those big names, Gabriel, Michael, that was basically the angelic A-list, right?
You'd think. But Davidson, he wasn't satisfied with just the usual suspects. Oh no, he dug into a whole treasure trove of other sources to put this dictionary together.
Like what? Give me the ancient secrets.
Think pseudepigrapha.
So what now?
Basically, writings from way back when, claiming to be by biblical figures, but shrouded in mystery, like who actually wrote this stuff and why all the secrecy.
Okay, intrigue level definitely rising. So Davidson's combing through these, let's call them less mainstream texts, trying to find the missing pieces of the angelic puzzle.
Exactly. He was particularly obsessed with those 7 angels mentioned in Revelations, wanted to know who they were, where they came from, the whole deal, and that search led him to some seriously interesting places.
Like, don't leave me hanging.
Think Kabbalistic writings, even grimoires, those medieval spell books.
Oh, okay, so we're not talking your grandma's angel figurines here. We're venturing into, like, forbidden knowledge territory.
Let's just say Davidson wasn't afraid to explore the shadows. He knew that to truly understand angels, you had to see the whole picture, even the dark corners.
Makes sense. And speaking of shadowy and mysterious, even flipping through this dictionary, some of these angel names are wild. It's like ancient Hebrew had a baby with a linguistic puzzle.
Yeah.
Was there any rhyme or reason to this naming frenzy?
Oh, there's a method to the madness, trust me. Davidson, he argues that those names, cryptic as they seem, often hold the key to an angel's whole purpose. Their attributes, even, like take the angel Hod,
Hod.
who represents splendor. Over time, that name, it evolved, became Hodiel, name and purpose intertwined.
So it's like each angel gets its own celestial job description woven right into its name tag.
Exactly. And this ties into this whole idea of names holding power.
Okay, now you're speaking my language.
Right. It's a big deal in a lot of magical traditions. Knowing an angel's true name, it's like a key unlocking its power, maybe even giving you the ability to, summon it.
Okay, see, now we're talking. This isn't just guardian angels and harps on clouds anymore. Davidson's painting a picture of a whole hierarchy, different classes of angels, each with their own specialty. That's a far cry from the serene figures we usually picture.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where Davidson goes beyond just a simple list of names. He's revealing these intricate systems, beliefs, that shaped how people viewed the angelic realm for centuries. He's opening a window into a world where angels weren't just these passive figures, but active players influencing everything, seasons changing, the fate of nations, you name it. And their roles. Oh, they get a lot more complex than you might think.
Speaking of complex roles, when I was flipping through Davidson's dictionary, some of these angel entries, let me tell you, they really caught my eye.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, there's one for the angel of insomnia. Apparently, God sent this angel to, get this, torment a king who couldn't sleep. I gotta say, as someone who's pulled an all-nighter or two, I can kind of relate.
It's definitely one of those universally relatable experiences, and it speaks to something important about how people viewed angels. It's like they weren't just these distant, otherworldly beings, they were part of everyday life, trying to make sense of it all.
Right, like, oh, bad dream. Must be that angel of insomnia messing with me.
Exactly, and it goes even deeper than just explaining the little things. Remember that angel of the embryo you mentioned?
Oh yeah, that one definitely got me thinking.
It wasn't just about the process of birth. Many cultures believed that certain angels, they were with you from the very beginning, guiding you throughout your entire life.
So, like a celestial life coach. Always there, cheering you on from the sidelines. I like it. But it wasn't all embryo angels and sleepless nights, right?
Yeah, definitely not.
Some of these entries in Davidson's dictionary are, well, they're out there. Like the angel of lewd ending up in the hands of J.P. Morgan. That's a plot twist I didn't see coming.
It's a perfect example of how these figures we think of as, strictly religious, they pop up in the most unexpected places throughout history. Art, finance, even a touch of mystery. It shows you how interconnected those worlds really are.
Right, like those 6 degrees of separation games, but with angels instead of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. But it brings a big question for me. We've been talking about angels as these guiding forces, protectors, well, mostly protectors. We'll set aside the insomnia incident for now.
Right.
But what about the whole good versus evil thing? Angels are supposed to be servants of God, right? So how do you explain fallen angels? demons, that whole darker side of the celestial coin.
Now that's where things get really interesting, theologically speaking. You have to consider the concept of free will, even for angels. Davidson, he points out that angels weren't created as mindless robots. They had the ability to choose, just like humans.
So even in heaven, there's that potential to, like, rebel against the system.
Exactly. And with that choice comes the risk of turning away from God. Of course, the most famous example is Satan. But there are tons of stories about fallen angels in this tradition.
It's like that old saying, power corrupts, but on a cosmic scale.
Does Davidson give any specific examples of this fall from grace? Oh, absolutely. He talks about the Grigori, these angels mentioned in the book of Enoch. They rebelled against God, faced some pretty serious consequences for it. They're often linked to those sons of God in Genesis, the ones who father children with human women.
Okay, now we're getting into some seriously intriguing and kind of weird territory. Angels and humans, mixing it up, that's a deep dive for another day. But it sounds like these fallen angels, they were just some theological afterthought. They played a key role in how these entire hierarchies were structured.
It gets even more complex when you realize that this idea of rebellion, it influenced how people envisioned heaven and hell. Davidson talks about how some traditions, they didn't see hell as this fiery underworld. Instead, it existed within heaven itself.
Wait, hold on. You're saying that even in paradise, there's a prison. That's a much darker view of heaven than I'm used to?
Right. It paints a much more complicated picture. A realm with its own internal struggles, its own forms of punishment.
Definitely not the harps and clouds scenario I grew up with. It's like Davidson is presenting a much more, well, human-like portrayal of the angelic world.
And that, I think, is what makes his work so fascinating. He doesn't shy away from the contradictions. He presents this whole tapestry of beliefs, interpretations, and leaves it to us to wrestle with the implications.
It really makes you think. This whole idea of heaven and hell, angels who rebel, angels who stay true, makes you wonder about us humans caught in the middle. If they can switch sides, can we? Can we transform that dramatically?
It's a question that's been around for centuries, and it's something Davidson definitely touches on, especially when he's exploring how angels interact with us. We've talked about guardians, messengers, but honestly, their roles get way more diverse. Davidson, he even mentions angels of commerce.
Okay, now that's an angel I could get along with. Someone to guide my stock portfolio, maybe?
Right, and angels of summer, even angels acting as, get this, celestial matchmakers.
Okay, you know what? Sign me up for that service. Cosmic dating pool, here I come. But seriously, it is fascinating how angels are portrayed as both helping us out, like those stories of angels intervening in battles, but also, punishing us when we mess up. That duality again.
It's like they embody that whole idea of divine will, mercy and judgment all wrapped up in one. And those stories about angels getting involved in our lives, they really highlight something important, the relationship between humans and the divine. It's messy, it's not simple, it's this mix of obedience and rebellion, grace, and sometimes punishment.
And then there's angelic magic, something Davidson seems pretty into. This whole idea of names being keys to power, conjurations, invocations. It's kind of like humans could tap into this cosmic energy if they just knew the right words, the right rituals. Kind of a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It is daunting. Davidson presents these practices not as a how-to guide, though. More like he's giving us a peek into this ancient desire, this human need to connect with something bigger than ourselves, to try and understand and maybe even control those unseen forces. Whether we should try to control them, though, well, that's a whole other conversation, right?
Totally. So after spending all this time with Davidson's work, what's the big takeaway for you? What really stuck with you?
For me, it's how timeless these figures really are. Davidson even said himself, angels, they come from these ancient traditions, yet they still fascinate us. We love this idea of beings that go beyond our limits, beings that offer a glimpse into a world we don't really understand.
Absolutely. Davidson's dictionary, it's like a doorway into that world. It reminds us there are still mysteries out there, forces we can't see that are shaping our lives in ways we may never fully grasp.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Out of all those angels Davidson talks about, which ones resonate with you and why? What does that say about what we believe? About that human desire for connection? Something to think about as you keep reading.
Definitely a lot to unpack. I know I'll be going back to this dictionary. And for anyone listening, we encourage you to do the same. Pick up a copy of Davidson's Dictionary of Angels, spend some time with it, see which angel calls out to you. You never know what you might find.